Imagine an ordinary child's drawing stopping a court hearing cold and uncovering what the adults have been too scared to say out loud for years. The municipal courtroom moves through its morning like a tired machine. Wooden benches, scarred with initials and years of restless waiting, creak as people shift. Damp jackets give off the smell of rain and asphalt. A faint chill follows everyone in from the street. Somewhere, a vent hums. The clerk flips through case files, paper whispering in small, dry bursts. A few people stare at their shoes. Others count the tiles on the ceiling. It's just another day of tickets and tired excuses. Next case, the clerk calls. Improper parking in a hospital zone. A young woman steps forward, guiding a boy by the shoulder. She can't be more than 32, but the lines at her eyes look older. Her hair is pulled back fast, not styled. The jacket on her shoulders has seen too many winters. She stands straight out of habit, not confidence. Her fingers tighten around a folded notice as if it might jump from her hand. Beside her, an 8-year-old boy slips onto the front bench. Serious eyes, thin wrists, his feet miss the floor by an inch. He doesn't fidget, doesn't whine. He simply opens a small notebook on his knees and begins to draw, pencil scratching quietly in the noise-thin room. Judge Caprio glances at the citation. "Ms. Hayes," he reads, "you're cited for parking in a restricted area near the children's hospital. You understand the charge?" "Yes, Your Honor," she answers, voice careful and polite. "I understand." He nods. To him, it's a familiar pattern. A rushed morning, a bad spot, a fine. Nothing unusual. We'll get to the details. For now, just tell me if you admit you were parked there. She inhales, steady but tight. "I do. I did park there." Someone in the back row sighs, already thinking about their own turn. The case sounds small, a forgettable line on a long docket. While the adults talk, the boy keeps working. He leans close to the page, tongue peeking between his teeth in concentration. He glances up at the judge, studies the lines of his face, then bends over the notebook again. His mother doesn't notice. She's focused on explaining herself in sentences that sound like they've been practiced in the car. "I was only going to be a few minutes," she says. Caprio raises a hand gently. "We'll come back to a few minutes, Ms. Hayes." He is about to ask his next question when the boy suddenly slides off the bench. The movement is so abrupt the bailiff takes a half step forward. The child walks straight toward the bench, clutching the notebook with both hands. "Sir," the boy says, small voice cutting cleanly through the room. Conversations stop. Heads turn. This is not how court works, and everyone knows it. The bailiff moves, but Caprio lifts his palm. "It's all right. Let him come." The boy reaches the rail and stretches his drawing up toward the judge. "I made this for you," he says. On the page, in uneven lines and careful colors, is the judge, robe, bench, the faint outline of the city seal. But he's not in the courtroom. He's sitting on the edge of a hospital bed, holding the hand of a child within 4 in his arm. There's a small smile drawn on the child's face. On the judge's too. For a moment, Caprio forgets to breathe. Somewhere in the back of his mind, something old stirs, his own memories of hospital corridors, of waiting, of wanting someone in authority to simply stay and listen. He looks back at the boy. "Why did you draw this?" he asks, more gently than before. "Because Mom says." The boy glances at her, then straightens his shoulders. "She says you're the only one who listens to people now." The words land heavier than any gavel. The room, which had been full of small sounds, coughs, shuffling feet, restless sighs, falls into complete silence. Even the hum of the vent seems to fade. The citation on the desk is still just ink on paper. But everyone in the courtroom feels it. Whatever this is, it stopped being just about parking the moment that drawing left the boy's hands. Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Caprio keeps the drawing in his hand a moment longer, then sets it carefully on the bench, as if it were evidence of something the file doesn't contain. "Ms. Hayes," he says, his voice quieter now. "Why don't you tell me what brought you here today, and what this picture means?" She swallows, eyes flicking to her son, then back to the judge. "There isn't much to tell, Your Honor. I work. A lot. 2 jobs. Days shift at the grocery, nights cleaning offices. It's just us, so?" She lifts a shoulder, as if that explains everything. "How many hours a week?" he asks. 12 most days." Sometimes more. She gives a small, apologetic smile. The math doesn't work any other way. The boy has slipped back onto the bench, hands folded over his knees now, listening. And your son? Caprio asks. Is he all right? He's managing, she says. Asthma, but the bad kind. They call it persistent. He scares the school nurse more than he scares me. She tries to joke, but her voice pinches at the edges. What happened the day of the ticket? They called from school, she says. Said he was wheezing, lips going pale. I was shelving canned soup. I dropped everything and drove straight there. She takes a breath, steadies it. I knew I was putting the car where I shouldn't. I saw the sign, but it was either leave it under that sign or wait for an ambulance. And our insurance, she gives a short, humorless laugh. The deductible on an emergency run is more than my rent. A low murmur ripples through the room, then dies. People in that age bracket know those numbers. Some have fought with them. So you gambled on the ticket instead of the ambulance, Caprio says, not accusing, just tracing the line. Yes, sir. Her fingers knot together. I thought the worst thing that could happen was a fine I'd figure out how to pay later. The worst thing that could happen to him. She doesn't finish. He glances at the record. This isn't the first citation near that hospital. No, she admits. The others I paid. Payday loans, extra shifts, whatever it took. I told myself it was just this season, that it would calm down. He lets that sit, then nods toward the drawing. Why did he put me in a hospital bed, he asks. That's not a place judges usually sit. For the first time, her eyes soften into something warmer than fear. When his dad had his heart surgery, she says, they kept him overnight. He was terrified, wouldn't sleep. The nurses were busy, so I played your videos on my phone. She gives a small, embarrassed shrug. Those clips from this courtroom. People talking to you, laughing sometimes. The older folks in the room shift, some recognizing what she means, others having watched those same clips at their own kitchen tables. He said you sounded like somebody who actually heard people, she continues. Every time they rolled him down the hallway, he'd ask for the nice judge again. After he died, her voice wavers once and steadies. My son kept watching. So when I told him we had to come here today, he said it was okay. He listens, he told me. He's the only one who does. Caprio looks at the boy, then at the little drawing of himself by a child's bedside. The citation in front of him suddenly feels very small next to the weight of being the person a frightened family chose to trust through a screen. He closes the file gently. The law is still the law, but the story has changed. Caprio leans back slightly, the way he does when he senses a story still has corners hidden in shadow. He taps the citation with one finger. Ms. Hayes, he says softly, I need to ask you something. These other tickets, these weren't near the hospital. Not all of them. Her shoulders tighten. She opens her mouth, closes it, tries again. Those were different days. From the bench beside her, the boy whispers, barely audible, Mom, tell him. The whisper lands like a pin dropped on marble, small, but impossible to ignore. A few heads turn. The mother straightens, face pale. I was late, she says quickly, coming from work. Sometimes I'd circle the block and, well, I'd take whatever space I could. I know it wasn't right. Caprio studies her. Something in the tone doesn't ring true, not deception exactly, but a missing piece. Before he can speak again, the side door opens. A uniformed officer steps in, holding his cap against his chest. It's the officer who issued one of the earlier citations. Your Honor, he says, clearing his throat. I'd like to say something, if that's allowed. It's unusual enough that the room stirs. Caprio nods. The officer steps forward. The day I wrote her up, he says, she wasn't arguing or rude. She was crying. Hard. She kept saying she couldn't lose her apartment. I didn't put that in the report because, well, it wasn't part of the violation. But I remember it. A slow ripple moves through the audience. Older faces exchange knowing glances, the kind that say we've seen this before. Caprio turns back to her. Is that true? Were you afraid you'd be evicted? Her breathing changes, shallow, uneven. She hesitates, then everything inside her seems to give way at once. Our landlord, she begins, voice cracking. He told me last year he doesn't want medical risks in the building. He evicted another family, quietly, after their daughter needed oxygen at home. I didn't want him to know about my son. If he found out how often we go to the hospital, she covers her mouth with her hand. I can't afford to move. I can barely afford where we are. The boy inches closer to her side. The room is motionless. No shifting, no murmurs now, just the stunned stillness of people confronting a truth that feels both familiar and unfair. Caprio's gaze softens, but his voice stays level. You hid your son's condition so you wouldn't be forced out. She nods, eyes red. I park where I shouldn't because I'm always rushing. If I lose this apartment, I lose the only place close enough to his school and the hospital. I know it's wrong, but I'm trapped. The judge lets the silence expand, not to shame her, but to let the weight of her situation fill the room. He looks down at the stack of minor citations, scraps of paper that suddenly represent something larger. Fear, survival, a system that leaves people choosing between rent and honesty. When he looks up again, the tone of the hearing has changed completely. The case is no longer about parking. It's about everything that pushed her into that space under the sign. The courtroom's tension shifts when a woman from the second row slowly rises. She wears a modest blazer, a stack of case files tucked under her arm. She clears her throat. Your Honor, I'm with the Department of Social Services. I apologize for interrupting, but I recognize Ms. Hayes. May I speak? A murmur sweeps across the room. People sense this isn't routine. Caprio nods. She steps forward. This family has been waiting for state assistance for 7 months. Her application was misplaced twice, first at intake, then during verification. She should have been receiving housing support, food aid, and a medical stipend. She's got none of it. A few people exhale sharply, as if they've heard this story in their own homes. Others shake their heads. Bureaucratic failure isn't new, but it never stops stinging. Caprio turns to the mother. Is that accurate? Her eyes drop. Yes. I didn't mention it because I'm working. I don't want to look like someone asking for a handout. Before she can say more, the boy speaks again, this time louder, his voice trembling. Mom cries at night. She thinks I don't hear. The honesty is so sudden, so bare, that even the bailiff looks away. The mother presses a hand to her cheek, trying to steady herself. Caprio studies the drawing still lying on his desk. Something nags at him. He lifts it again, tilts it under the light. In the lower corner, faint but unmistakable, sits a small rectangle with bold letters. Notice to vacate, 30 days. A door. Boxes. A building he assumes is theirs. The judge blinks. The boy wasn't just sketching imagination. He was spelling out a fear no child should carry. He looks at the mother. Your son knows about the eviction threat. She nods helplessly. I tried to hide it. But kids, they see everything. The courtroom grows impossibly still. A woman in the back wipes her eyes. A man crosses his arms, jaw tight, as if holding back anger, not at her, but at the circumstances. Caprio sets the drawing down gently, almost reverently. We are no longer discussing a parking violation, he says, voice low but resonant. We're looking at a family held together by whatever hope they can manage. The mother lowers her head. The boy edges closer to her, his hand barely touching her sleeve. Caprio leans forward, the weight of the moment settling across the oak bench. And now, he continues, we must decide how to deal with the truth that should never have taken this long to surface. The entire room waits, breath caught, hearts pulled into the story they didn't expect when the morning began. Caprio straightens the files before him, restoring a formality the room seems reluctant to return to. Let's review what happened that day, he says. His tone isn't sharp, just steady enough to guide everyone back to the facts. The officer steps forward. He's middle-aged, tired in the quiet way public servants often are, but his voice is respectful. Your Honor, when I saw her car in the restricted zone, I intended to issue the citation. But she looked distressed, truly distressed. She kept glancing back at the hospital doors. I asked if she needed help, but she didn't answer. She just ran inside. He hesitates, then adds, it didn't feel like defiance. It felt like fear. Caprio nods and motions to the clerk. A screen flickers to life, showing grainy footage from outside the pediatric wing. The mother appears in view, carrying her son. His limbs hang limp. Her hair sticks to her cheeks. She's breathing hard. She's not careless. She's desperate. A hush falls over the gallery. One elderly man removes his cap, holding it against his chest. Someone near the aisle presses a tissue to her mouth. The video ends. Caprio closes his eyes for a moment, then says, this confirms what we needed to know. The violation happened, but the context matters. The social worker steps forward again. Your Honor, regarding the housing issue, her landlord cannot evict her because her child has medical needs. That would be discriminatory under state law. The mother looks stunned, as if hearing this for the first time. Caprio leans back. So she's been living under the threat of losing her home illegally? Yes, sir. The judge turns to the woman. Why didn't you report it? She folds her hands, ashamed. Because the last thing I wanted was to be seen as trouble. If he pushed us out, I had nowhere else to go. Before Caprio can respond, the boy tugs at his mother's sleeve and whispers something. She shakes her head, but he speaks up anyway. We have more drawings, he says quietly. He pulls a crumpled paper from her bag. This one is when we thought we'd have to sleep in the car. The mother's face drains of color, but she doesn't stop him. Caprio gestures for the page. The image is simple but haunting. The two of them under a dripping streetlight, cardboard boxes around their feet. And beside them, he recognizes his own figure, holding an umbrella over their heads. The courtroom collectively exhales, a sound of grief and tenderness intertwined. Caprio studies the picture. The child had imagined a stranger offering shelter because, in real life, no one else had. He sets the drawing down, his fingers resting on its edge. This, he says softly, is not the imagination of a carefree boy. This is the voice of a child who's run out of places to feel safe. No one speaks. The officer clears his throat, almost apologetic. Judge, if I may, I've been doing this job 28 years. I've never seen a situation where a parking ticket felt so small. Caprio nods, gratitude in his eyes. The judge then turns to the mother. You've been fighting battles you should never have had to fight alone. And the system has failed you in ways this court can't ignore. Her lips tremble. I'm doing my best. I know, Caprio replies. And today, we make sure your best isn't taken advantage of. He looks at the bailiff. Prepare the necessary forms. We're not finished yet, but we finally understand the full picture. The air in the room shifts again. Not toward pity, not toward judgment, toward resolve. For the first time since the hearing began, the mother sits a little straighter, as if the weight on her chest has loosened just enough to let her breathe. The boy reaches for her hand. She squeezes back, and the courtroom waits, not for punishment, but for the decision that will define everything that follows. Caprio adjusts his glasses, letting the silence settle. It isn't the heavy kind anymore. It's the kind that prepares people for something they didn't dare hope for. He folds his hands. Before I speak to either of you, I want to say this clearly. The law may be rigid, but justice is not blind to circumstance. The mother watches him with a quiet dread, braced for more bad news. The boy leans forward, clutching the edge of her coat. I'm dismissing every citation, Caprio says. All fines, all outstanding fees, removed. A soft gasp rolls through the room. The mother covers her mouth, as if stopping a sob from escaping. But Caprio isn't finished. We're forwarding your housing issue to the city's legal office. Your landlord will receive formal notice. What he attempted violates state protections, and he won't be able to threaten you again. For the first time all morning, the woman's shoulders drop, not in defeat, but in relief. The boy looks up at her, hopeful. Caprio turns toward him. Young man, he says gently, may I keep your drawing? The child hesitates, glancing at his mother. She nods. Slowly, he steps toward the bench, placing the picture into the judge's hands. But, he swallows, voice shaking. Only if you promise we won't have to leave our home. Caprio bends forward, lifting the corners of his mouth in a tender, almost paternal smile. I can't promise life will never be hard. But I promise this, you won't face this alone. Not anymore. The boy studies his face, as though deciding whether to trust him. Then he nods. Before Caprio can say another word, a man stands from the back row, broad-shouldered, dressed in a plain work jacket dusted with construction grit. He clears his throat. Judge, if I may, I own a small contracting business. If this family owes anything to that landlord, I'll take care of it. And if they ever need to move, I'll make sure they have a place that treats them right. The gallery stirs. Caprio lifts an eyebrow, surprised but not skeptical. The mother shakes her head instinctively. I can't let you do that. The man answers simply, Ma'am, sometimes people just need a hand. No shame in that. Her eyes brim again, not from humiliation this time, but gratitude so overwhelming she can't speak. Caprio looks down at the drawing now resting beside his gavel. The small figure of himself holding an umbrella over a frightened family seems to echo the moment perfectly. He raises his voice just enough for the room to hear. The law keeps order, but compassion repairs what order alone cannot. He turns to the mother. You've carried burdens no one saw, and today, this courtroom becomes your shelter. Then to the boy, keep drawing. You see the world clearly, more clearly than many adults. He lifts the gavel but pauses, as though wanting the final thought to land fully. Justice isn't about punishment. It's about reminding us of the kind of people we are meant to be. A single tap. Soft. Final. The mother wraps her arms around her son. He buries his face in her shoulder, finally letting go of the fear he's carried far too long. No applause this time. Only reverent quiet, as if the room understands that something sacred just occurred. Caprio gathers the two drawings and places them carefully inside his folder. Symbols now, not of a case, but of a promise honored. And as the small family steps toward the exit, they move not like people cornered by circumstance, but like people stepping back into daylight with the faint but unmistakable sense that the world has room for them after all.